Everybody, I'm going to give you just a very brief update on some news that came out today, what it means and what it doesn't mean. So the news, in case you haven't been looking at the news, is regarding the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine candidate that's in phase 3 trials. As we've discussed many times previously, this vaccine candidate is an mRNA-based vaccine where they take some mRNA of SARS-CoV-2, not the whole virus, just some mRNA, which creates proteins associated with the virus. They take that mRNA, they encapsulate it in a little fat bubble, basically, and inject that into the person. And that mRNA then is within the person, and the person is generating a response against proteins that are associated with that mRNA. We've discussed this many times previously, so I'm going to just not discuss the vaccine design anymore here. What I am going to discuss, and again, this is going to be brief because we don't really have any specific data out right now, is the news about the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine candidate. The news that's out today is that they have just dropped their initial findings from their phase 3 trials. So their phase 3 trials, as we've discussed previously, and again, just remember that this is Pfizer along with their German counterpart BioNTech working in collaboration on this. Their phase 3 trials are going to be conducted with many thousand people. So 44,000 is the current phase 3 trial cohort. And roughly half of them are going to be getting the vaccine candidate and half of them are going to be on a placebo. And the idea would be they're going to compare these groups and see how many less of the vaccine group end up contracting COVID, how the severity compares between people that get the disease anyway, whether they got the vaccine or not, whether the people that got the vaccine are able to still transmit the virus to other people. These are all the questions that they're looking to answer here, as well as safety information. Now, these mRNA vaccines, we know that there's side effects associated with them: fever, chills, muscle aches. Nothing too severe. This is a relatively safe vaccine plan, mRNA. The mRNA can't actually do anything that the virus does in your body. It's just genetic information associated with the virus. So it's a relatively safe plan. We have seen side effects, but they're only mildly more severe than what we would expect with like a pneumonia vaccine, for example. What the big news is that on this initial data that's coming out, they have claimed that they are seeing a more than 90% efficacy rate. So the way that they're able to determine this is, again, there's 44,000 people in this phase 3 trial. They had a plan for updating the public as well as regulators periodically along that regulation process and the trial process of how things are going. And the way that they were going to conduct this is at set points when they reach a certain number of cases of COVID in the people that are enrolled in the phase 3 trial, they would then look at what the percentage of people in the trial that had gotten the vaccine versus gotten the placebo were the cases. So, for example, this first initial data drop that they're having right now is at a 94 case threshold, or a 94 case interim analysis. What this means is, so out of these 44,000 people that are enrolled, once they had 94 of those 44,000 confirmed with COVID, they would analyze that data. Okay, so they hit the 94 case threshold now. So there's been 94 people who are in the phase 3 trial for the Pfizer vaccine who have gotten COVID. Hopefully that makes sense. However, the 94 cases aren't the people necessarily that got the vaccine because, again, the phase 3 trial has people that are on the vaccine as well as people that are on a placebo. What they then were able to compare is, of these 94 people, how many of them were taking the vaccine and how many of them had the placebo. And when they say that they're looking at 90% efficacy, that would mean that 9 or less of these 94 cases were people that were on the vaccine course. It was a vaccine then with another booster about 3 weeks later. So what this means is that about 9 times more cases, so 9 or less cases were in the vaccine group, the rest were in the placebo group, meaning that around 9 times more people that were on the placebo in this group got COVID than the people on the vaccine. In other words, the number of people that were on the vaccine compared to the people on the placebo was reduced by 90% that ended up contracting COVID. Now, I know that I've just said it a bunch of different ways, but saying the exact same thing, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that this data is only on, they have 44,000 people that are enrolled, but they're only dropping the data on these 92 people. The idea now is they're going to do another release of interim data once they have 164 cases of COVID within their study group, their phase 3 trial group. Once they're at 164, they'll again drop more data associated with how many of those people were on the vaccine, how many of those people were on the placebo. Then they can start to look at severity. Okay, the people that were on the vaccine that got sick, are they still having severe cases or are they all very mild? Again, keeping in mind that most of the people that get COVID don't have severe disease, but the idea would be, is the percentage of people who get the disease that end up with severe disease the same as people that are on the placebo or less than people that are on the placebo? Are the people who are contracting COVID still having the virus replicate in their system and are able to spread it to other people? Or are they not having the virus replicate at all? These are the questions that need to be answered. Now, there's going to be, as I said, they're going to do the exact same kind of drop when they get to 164 cases. Then at that point, they want to submit their data overall from the 44,000 people to regulators and hope to have it approved. Hopefully this makes sense in terms of how their studies are going. So now let's get to the perspective. 90% reduction in cases of the vaccine group compared to the placebo group. So what does this mean? Of course, that's good news. The more that we can reduce the number of people that are getting sick with the vaccine, the better. Now, there's been no data received yet in terms of actual data to independent researchers or whoever, regulators. There's been no data that's actually been released. There's just been this statement by the company. That's important to keep in mind, and that's why this video is going to be short, because I don't have any data to actually look through and tell you specifically. I only have this statement, 90% efficacy, and it was at the 94 case threshold. They're going to continue to 164. That's all I've got. So what this means is that it appears, as of now, at the 94 case point, that the vaccine is very efficacious. Even better than what we were hoping. We were thinking that it would be 60-70%. At least that was kind of the general consensus. 90% is far in excess of that, keeping in mind that there's only been 94 cases reported out of the 44,000 people in the phase 3 trial. We don't have data on the severity of the people that were on the vaccine versus not on the vaccine. Again, keeping in mind that at most there was 9 people that received the vaccine that got COVID. The rest were in the placebo group. We don't have data on viral titers within the people that got the vaccine versus didn't get the vaccine. We don't know what their viral load was. We don't know how much virus they were shedding and therefore how much they were able to spread it to other people, because that's very important in regards to herd immunity. If you have a small group of people that have relative immunity themselves, but they're still infecting other people, that doesn't take them out of the susceptible population. They don't act as a buffer for susceptible people, basically. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, feel free to write in. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that Pfizer also made a statement that they could have up to 50 million doses by the end of the year, by the end of 2020, if the trials all go well. So assuming that at the 164 case mark, they're still looking at a very high reduction in cases among the vaccinated population versus the placebo population. And then the regulators look at the overall data from the 44,000 people and say, yeah, it looks very safe and it looks like it's effective. Assuming that that all goes smoothly, Pfizer's hoping to have 50 million doses ready by the end of the year. We have to keep in mind that this vaccine requires booster shots for people that get it. They have to get one shot and then at least one booster that's 3 weeks later. They're also looking at some where they're getting multiple boosters. So what does this mean? Once the 50 million doses are made, they have to be distributed and then administered. Given that they have to have multiple doses for people for this vaccine to be effective, we're looking at most, by the end of the year, 25 million. So it's going to be somewhere probably between 15 and 25 million people vaccinated globally by the end of the year from this vaccine alone. Again, we're only talking about the Pfizer vaccine right now. Of course, that's a great start. Assuming that everything goes smoothly, it assumes the 164 interim report is good. It assumes that the regulatory process is good in terms of the regulators looking at the data from the 44,000 person phase 3 trials. It assumes that it's safe. It assumes that the effectiveness is high. And it assumes that the target of 50 million doses by the end of the year is hit. They also estimate that by the end of 2021, they'd be able to produce 1.5 billion doses. Again, this is going to be sufficient for vaccinating between 500 million and 750 million people. That's really great. The more people that you vaccinate, the better. We have 7 billion people on the planet, just over 7 billion people. So this vaccine alone is not going to be able to cover everybody by the end of 2021, at least from what I've seen. Again, their target that I saw was by the end of next year, having 1.5 billion doses and having to give everybody at least 2 doses, 1.3 billion, sorry, I just found it. 1.3 billion doses. But again, that means that at most we're going to have 750 million people that have gotten the 2-dose trial. Also worth mentioning that this specific vaccine, the Pfizer BioNTech one, has to be stored at super cold temperatures, so ultra refrigeration, not just like in a regular freezer. It has to be kept super, super cold, which is really difficult to maintain in a lot of different places. So distribution and storage of the vaccine is going to be difficult for sure. This is great news. It's really promising. It's even better than what we were hoping for in terms of the apparent efficacy thus far. We need a lot more data because, again, this is only through 94 cases. We need to look again at the 164. And I'm sorry to keep reiterating myself, but I really want to make sure that this is clear because I think that some of the media that I've already seen has been a little bit iffy on this. Of course, keeping in mind that it's only come out this morning. We have to check again at the 164 case mark. We have to look at how safe it is. Again, we're assuming that it's going to be pretty safe. It's a pretty safe vaccine design. We have to check the efficacy, make sure that it's still high. Then the regulators have to look at it. The whole 44,000 person cohort, the data for it, they want to make sure that it's safe, efficacious, and relatively long lasting. Then they have to make it 50 million doses by the end of the year, which is enough to treat 15 to 25 million people. Then they're going to have to continue to produce it. By the end of 2021, 1.3 billion doses, hopefully, which would be enough to treat between 600 million and 750 million people. That's not enough in order to generate herd immunity, assuming that we don't all get infected by the time that that's out. So we're going to rely on other vaccines from other companies to also be made at the same time if we want to end it by 2021, unless we take massive public health measures like everybody's wearing masks, everybody's social distancing at the same time that this vaccine is being distributed. But assuming that things continue to go as they are with the number of cases that we're having now, we are going to require at least one more vaccine candidate that can get a lot produced by the end of 2021 to be distributed. So hopefully that clears up some things. I'm going to leave this video public on YouTube. I'm going to leave it public on my Patreon. Feel free to share it. I think that hopefully it'll clear up some questions that people have in regards to the news that's come out today. So thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll talk to you all soon.